these sorts of messages. That's my contention. And that's why it's so difficult to look for the historical Jesus. It's almost, well, we're going to try, and we've been trying, but I want to do it from the background. Let's look at how the people feel anyway. So anyway, he was not going to assume royal power or even the title until he was confirmed by Caesar, who by the terms of Herod's will was in supreme control. So there's an interesting point. Herod had even given Augustus Caesar by caveat total control in Palestine. That's really interesting. You could always pick up something new when you read Josephus. I hadn't even noted that before. These things are buried in paragraphs and paragraphs of data in Josephus. That's why it's so important. At Jericho also, when the army had tried to set the crown on his head, Archelaus had refused, etc. Anyway, he wanted to endeavor to be kinder to them than his father had been to the people, to pay the soldiers and things like that. This promise delighted the crowd, who at once tested his sincerity by making large demands. Some clamored for a lightening of direct taxation. There it is, against taxation, the crowd is always saying. The abolition of the purchase tax. Others for the release of prisoners. Here's where I think the Gospels get the release of prisoners idea. He probably said yes to every demand in his anxiety to please the mob. There's almost a type situation for Pontius Pilate. Then he offered sacrifice, sat down to a banquet. But in the afternoon, a number of men with revolutionary ideas collected and began lamentations of their own when the public mourning for the late king was over, bewailing those who had been executed by Herod for cutting down the golden eagle from the temple gate. Now before Herod died, he had executed these partisans. These were not secret lamentations, but piercing wails, weeping in chorus, beating of breast. What year is this? 4 BC. The year when Herod supposedly kills all the Jewish children, or when Jesus is born in the Gospel of Matthew. That may be accurate. Herod was pretty brutal in 4 BC. Nevertheless, Josephus is writing this in what date? Around 72, 3, 4, it's published maybe around 5 or 6. He's writing it before that. So, did he see these events? Where's he getting it from? This is a very detailed account, right? He didn't see this. He didn't witness it. Thank God for that, because if he had witnessed it, it probably would be more distorted. He's cribbing it from previous historians who wrote it down. Just like, should I say you or we crib in the modern term from books we read. This is probably from a writer called Nicolaus of Damascus, whose work has not survived, but whom Josephus often refers to. He was an Herodian ambassador in Rome, who had been a high official in the Herodian regime and witnessed all these events and was much older and knew about all these things, who had written earlier histories. And there are 2 or 3 other historians that Josephus mentions. Justus of Tiberias, Nicolaus of Damascus, and Strabo of Cappadocia, the famous geographer. So Josephus, from this period, is relying on sources, but I think this is probably pretty accurate. Okay. Then he offered sacrifice, sat down to a banquet, and the people began to wail. So they're wailing for who? The partisans who were executed by Herod. Who are the popular group? The partisans who were executed by Herod. This is 4 BC. These were not secret lamentations, but piercing wails, weeping in chorus, beating of breasts, resounding throughout the whole city. Okay, no doubt who the heroes are. As they were for men who they said had died for the laws of their country and for the temple. That's the key, to die for the what? The law of Moses. Now Paul is not into dying for the law of Moses. So here we have people up to this time sacrificing themselves for the law of Moses and for the temple, who were willing to undergo any torture, any sacrifice, any death, any martyrdom. That's what you get in this book. To avenge them, they clamored for the punishment of Herod's placement. Let's see. I'm ahead of myself. I should actually read you what these men did. This is in the previous chapter. Just as Herod's dying, they're waiting for his recovery. He's gone down for bath to the Dead Sea. In the midst of his troubles, this is when Herod is still alive and for, there occurred a popular rising. There were two sophists with a great, or teachers with a great reputation, or rabbis, as exponents of national tradition, and for that reason were held in high esteem by the whole nation. So these are people highly thought. Judas, son of Sepharias, we were reading this when the fire drill broke, and Matthias, the son of Margolis. Many a student came to them for instruction. In fact, they daily attracted a host of men in their prime. When they learned that the king was succumbing to the sickness of body and mind, they dropped a hint to their acquaintance that this was a wonderful chance to strike a blow for God, to pull down the works erected contrary to the laws of their fathers. There it is again. These are laws, contrary to the laws of their father. They should sacrifice themselves for the law of Moses. Now that sounds alien to us. We only know that you sacrifice yourself for Jesus. We never hear about sacrificing yourself for the law of Moses. But that preceded it, you see. This is the start of martyrdom. And it starts in Palestine with these ideas. In the Maccabean period, and you'll read it, and if you ever look at Maccabees 2, you'll see the whole presentation of the martyrdom method. To die for the laws of their country. It was a glorious thing. And you would get your soul back again. You would get your body back again. You would be resurrected. Maccabees 2 tells you if you read that book. Although it was unlawful to have the temple, images, portrait, bust, or likeness of any living king, the king had put a great golden eagle over the entrance. This the teachers now urged them, the rabbinic teachers, to cut down, saying, now this is not Pharisee Judaism, to cut down, saying that even if danger was involved, it was a glorious thing to die for the laws of their fathers. This is the ethos of the Maccabean uprising. This is the ethos of Maccabees 2. For those who came to such an end, there was a sure hope of immortality. Maccabees 2 said they will get their bodies back again for this kind of behavior. And where has that gone today, besides Christian history in the early centuries of the Christian epoch? But where is it now? Islamic jihadists. That's what they think. Where do they get that idea? I believe right out of this period. They don't know that. But that's where it comes from. I mean, it's not clearly stated in Muhammad, it's some hinted at there, but he gets it from the earlier sources. And this is the earliest source of this kind of willingness to die for the laws of the ancestors.